Welcome to the Set to Lead podcast, the online mentoring platform for emerging and current leaders. My name is Marianne Samdi, leadership coach and talent development expert, and I will be your host.
Welcome, Steve. Welcome to the show.
It's great to be here.
Thank you for coming on board. I wanted to jump right in and tell our listeners a little bit about your background and how you were led to start Founders Space.
Sure. So my background is I've done a lot of things. So I have a background in electrical computer engineering. I went to graduate school in film and television. And then I worked in Hollywood, and after that, I did game design, and then I became an entrepreneur. I've worked in large corporations, managing divisions, and I've done everything from the ground up, and all of that has added up to what I've put in my book.
I see. And all of this led to you starting this company called Founders Space. Tell our listeners a little bit about Founders Space.
So I did 3 different venture-funded startups.
Yeah.
And after I did my 3rd startup, I was taking a break because it's a lot of work to do a startup.
It really
and my
is.
friends, it is. And my friends started to come to me and say, Steve, can you help me? I want to do my own company. I want to get going. How do I raise venture capital? How do I put together a business plan? All the different questions they had. So I was really just helping them part-time as I was doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just kept growing. It kept growing. We would do these roundtables where I'd invite in angel investors and lawyers and everybody they would need to help them get going. I started a blog. People responded to the blog, so it was a lot more than just my friends. And as we kept growing, we created this incubator and accelerator here in San Francisco. And that went really well. But San Francisco is a hub for the world. Everybody's coming in and out of Silicon Valley. And I saw our mission as actually to help innovation, not just here locally, but all around the world. And today, after 6 years of doing this, we have over 50 partners in 22 countries.
Wow. Even Singapore. You've gone really far.
Yes, we have partners in Singapore. We actually have offices in China. So we're in 3 major cities in China, and soon we'll be in 6 this year. So we're expanding very rapidly.
Wow. And along this journey, you found time to write a book.
Yes, I did, because for the past 6 years, plus my own personal experience for a decade before that, doing startups, I've been working with hundreds of startups around the world, helping them to get, how to put together their business plans, how to think about their products, design their products, bring them to market, get funding, all the different elements, and then launch in different countries. And I've seen that process and how difficult it is. And that is why I wrote the book, Make Elephants Fly.
Make Elephants Fly, the process of radical innovation. I love it. I want the community to learn how to make their personal elephants fly. So I read a little bit of your book, and in your book, you mentioned how some great inventors die poor. I thought that was very interesting. Talk to us a little bit about who these inventors are and why do you think they died poor?
So that's a great one. So
yeah.
First of all, there's a big difference I think people need to understand between inventing something and innovating. Mm-hmm. Now, inventing especially a new core technology, I'm not just talking like a new type of coat hanger. That's, you can do that pretty quickly if you come up with the idea. But inventing a core technology like the transistor or anything you see out there, it takes a huge amount of time and effort and money. Mm-hmm. You look at inventors like Tesla, now a car is named after him, but he died poor. And he was one of the most brilliant inventors in the world that ever lived. He was driven. Our entire power grid, everything, that a lot of the things we take for granted were from Tesla. Now, but Tesla, just because he invented them, didn't mean he was the one to benefit from monetizing them, from making money from them. Mm-hmm. Now, innovators usually don't invent core technologies because they have no money when they start. They're entrepreneurs. They don't have a lot of money and they don't have a lot of time. So what they tend to do is take these core technologies that have been developed over years by research institutions and governments and military, like the internet, DARPA, and then they actually figure out how to apply them to new businesses. And they are usually the ones to reap the profits. They are the ones we read about creating unicorns.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that are creating unicorns, these innovation experts.
Yes. Yeah. So basically it's entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs, every time a new technology is born into the world, it actually comes in and it's like opening a door. And that door is the door of opportunity. So when you apply that technology to an industry, whether it's finance, whether it's the food industry, whether it's healthcare, you could take the same core technologies and apply them to different industries. And actually, the entrepreneur has a chance by innovating how they use that technology in the industry to gain a huge competitive advantage. That's what allows startups to grow so quickly and push aside the old traditional players and then actually become, very big businesses within a matter of years.
So is there a process to this? So, from a leadership perspective, how do you effectively lead a team to innovate?
Well, when I am looking at innovators, when I'm looking at a startup, I'm an investor too. So I'm a writer, investor, run my incubator and accelerator. I look at a lot of startups. And the thing I always start with is not the core technology because, the technology's out there. A lot of people can grab that technology. Mm-hmm. And I don't even usually start with their idea because usually their first idea, especially at a very early stage, is wrong. They don't have it right. Almost like 80% of the startups have to modify or totally scrap their initial ideas before they hit on something that really works. What I look for is the team. Who is the team? And I will tell you, the most important person in the team of a startup or any innovation project, whether it's in a large corporation or anything, is the team leader / CEO, the one in charge. Now, how do I know if this team is really going to go or if the team is going to fall apart? Because a lot of startups end up, they just fail miserably. Either the founders fight or they can't execute on their idea, a lot of different reasons, or they just don't have the talent in the team. So what I do is I look at the CEO and then I'll look at the background, what university did they go to? What job did they have? But not everybody who went to a top tier university is a great entrepreneur and a great innovator. And everybody who worked at a big company like Google is a great entrepreneur. Some of them are good in big corporations. So what I look at is who did they bring on their team? How did they manage to convince really talented, amazing people to forego an incredible job, at Facebook or Microsoft or somewhere else and join this startup for no money because they believe in that CEO? And in order to do that, that CEO needs to be a leader. They need to have the skill. I say the number one skill a leader has, especially in a startup, is to attract great talent. If you can't attract great talent, you can't build a company with one person, no matter how talented you are. Right, you can't build $1 billion company by yourself. So you must attract other talented people and build a structure in order to, that's the foundation for success. If you can attract amazing people, even if your idea is wrong, like totally off base, your amazing team will figure out something that does work later on. Right. They'll figure out that this doesn't work and then they'll change and then they'll get it. But if your idea is right and you have a really not a great team, the team will fail to execute. And somebody else, because the ideas are out there, somebody else will end up passing you up and winning the market. So yes. So in essence, just to sum it up, those leadership skills are the number one thing I look for at the beginning of any startup.
Wow. So can you share some stories of folks that you've taken a look at? You're taking a look at a business and they didn't have those leadership skills. They had a poor team. What are some examples of teams you've seen out there that just had it wrong in terms of their team? Can you share?
Well, I won't name names, but I'll tell you some. No. I'll tell you some stories.
Yeah.
So, entrepreneurs will come to me and they will say, I've been working on this a year and a half, and I put in a lot of my money, and can you help me find a co-founder? Can you help me find a co-founder? And I'm like, you've been working on this a year and a half, and you haven't found a co-founder. It's going to be really tough now. And the problem is, most people kind of get it backwards, right? They actually focus on their idea and they get so excited they start working on that without building the team and taking, and thinking themselves more as a leader. They think of themselves as a hands-on doer. And after you put like a year and a half and, $100,000 of your own money into something, it's hard to bring on a great co-founder and give them enough equity to make it worthwhile for them, Plus, it's not even their idea. Great leaders, want their team to help them come up with the idea. And when I see a lot of startups who are done by kind of individuals who may be talented, but they don't want to really share their idea. They don't want to let their team feel like they're a part of creating that from the ground up. That is the most powerful thing you can do as a leader, is to give away ownership of your baby, of your idea, and let your team take it over and make it theirs. So I see, you asked me, what are teams that fail? Number one fails because the CEO at an early stage thinks they can do it alone and does it alone and doesn't bring other people into the process. Great leaders bring other people into the process. That's what they do, and they do it really well. It's not that they're maybe the genius inventor or the genius innovator, but they're a genius at getting other people to invest their own genius into the company.
So let's stay there, because we're talking about, really, in essence, how do you create a culture of innovation? How do you inspire your team to collaborate? What are some simple actions that these team leaders, these CEOs can take to foster that culture of innovation, to inspire collaboration and brainstorming and things of that nature? What are some simple steps?
Okay. I have some simple things that everybody can do. It doesn't cost any money. It doesn't even require a complex process to put into place. So some of the most basic things are when you come into work every day at your company, whether it's a big company and you're leading a team there, or whether it's, a startup, it's the same thing. In a lot of bosses, managers feel like their job is to manage. Right? Their job is to tell people what to do. So you'll go into work and you'll say, you do this, you do that. No, don't do this. I don't want you focused on this. I want you focused on this. So they will be telling people what to do. And what that does is that shuts down your employees, because if you're always telling them every step of the way what to do, then they are going to wait for you to tell them what's okay to do and what's not to do. What they won't do is take initiative. They won't feel free to just try something because they think of it. And so they'll shut down their creative side. They'll shut down their side that says, well, I actually think I should be doing this. And I think, so really good innovation leaders will come in to their team every day and ask them questions. ask, not tell. That's what I call it.
Right,
So
right.
they will go in and they will go up to their team members and they'll ask them to say, what are you working on today? Why is that your top priority? Where do you think our strategic direction is? What do you think we can get the most value of? How do you think we can speed this up, get the product out sooner? Blah, 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 blah. More and more questions. Those questions do two things. And number one, they inform the manager of what the person is really thinking, because if you're just telling them, you're not hearing anything. You aren't learning anything. Right. And they get the employee to actually prompt them to think about these hard things that they may not have thought about and question where they're going and come up with better and better solutions. And if the employee doesn't know, you could say, well, why don't you look into this and come back to me? And why, or you challenge them on some of their assumptions. Have you thought about this other idea or this other path? You don't tell them they have to take another path because from your experience, maybe doing it a different way is better, but you ask them to compare both and think about both. And that gives them the decision, the ownership to actually make that decision, plus the challenge of actually going deeper, which is what you want them to do.
Yeah. So your book is about radical innovation, not just innovation, but radical innovation. What do you want our listeners to know about radical innovation?
So there's a difference. There's many types of innovation. Most corporations, especially large companies, practice incremental innovation. They are very good at making products a little better every iteration, adding a new feature, getting the price lower, blah, 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 blah. So they're really good at that. Few companies are, because they become big and they have a whole process in place, few companies are really good at taking a huge leap forward, what we call radical innovation. That's when you leapfrog your competitors. When you come up with a breakthrough that none of your competitors had and enter the market so far ahead of them that it puts you in another league. And that radical innovation allows you to basically steal customers away from your competitors. Incremental innovation allows you just to compete. But if you really want to grab market share, that's when companies like Apple come up with a breakthrough like the iPod. There were MP3 players out there.
Yeah.
MP3, they didn't invent the MP3 player, but they innovated on the MP3 player. That's what Apple did. But they didn't take an incremental step and just make a little bit better MP3 player, because then they would have been like everybody else. They totally rethought the ecosystem of music and how you get your music, how you pay for your music, how you transfer it from one device to another. They redesigned the whole thing, and that's what allowed Apple to leapfrog ahead. They did it again with the iPhone and the iPad. They are continually doing that, and that's when you saw Apple explode, right? Right. They just exploded. They went from a company that was almost failing to the world's richest company, and with startups, it's the same thing. You can do it as a big corporation, and when you do it as a big corporation, you have all the advantages of a big corporation. You receive it's an enormous impact. A startup can also do it, and that's when a startup is able to compete with much larger incumbents, because you can't compete with a big corporation as a tiny startup unless you have a radical innovation. There's no way for you to compete.
Is there a way to take that huge step forward and have radical innovation and lower the risk involved with it?
Good question. Lowering the risk. Inherent in radical innovation is risk. And the more radically you innovate, a lot of times the higher the risk. Because what radical innovation is saying, you're going to do something nobody else has done before. So you don't know if it will work. If you knew it would work, then it's pretty much a small incremental innovation.
Exactly.
You're not rethinking the whole process, the whole landscape. So when you radically innovate, you take a lot of risk and there's a lot of failure. And that's why we see the failure rate among startups, it's around, if you count from the very beginning all the way to the very end, it's around 90% fail. But those 10% that succeed, wow, you get companies like Airbnb and Dropbox and Google and Facebook and, companies that have actually just change everything, change our entire lives and change industries around the world.
So I'm wondering, you said something a little while ago, that a lot of these companies almost failed. They were at a point of almost failure. And because they were almost at failure, they had to do something radical. I'm wondering, do you push towards radical only when you're about to collapse? Is that why a lot of these larger traditional organizations aren't taking these huge steps?
Yes. See, that's a really good point. Traditional organizations, they have money coming in, right? So they usually die a gradual death. They gradually become less and less relevant, but they're not like bankrupt overnight. And by the time they hit that point where they're bankrupt, like Blockbuster Video, it's too late.
Right.
Or the good guys, all these companies that go under, or Sun Microsystems, then it's just like boom. But by the time they realize that they're totally missed the boat, it's too late. They can't even recover because the income they're getting from their legacy products or from their current direction is enough to mask the fact that they're failing. Now, with a startup, it's hard to mask because literally the money's coming out of your own pocket and you're not making money. So when you're failing. And a lot of the greatest startups we saw came out of failed companies. I mean, you look at Twitter. They came out of a failed podcasting company. So a podcasting company was dying, and then they basically came up with Twitter, and boom, that became their thing. You look at Flickr. They were a failed game. The game didn't work, but they had a really cool feature in the game, which was social photo sharing, which they yanked out of the game and made a separate product, and boom, it took off. You look at YouTube. They came out of a failed video dating site. When you are failing, that's when you'll try new things because you're like, oh my God, if we don't try something new, we are dead.
Exactly. So Steve, for someone, an organization or a small entrepreneur, for someone who is sort of lost in the old way, for lack of a better word, the traditional way of doing things, are there any mental models or processes, without giving away all of your book, what can they do to step into this radical way of thinking so that they survive the long haul?
Okay. I have a lot, so I can give away a lot because there's so many different ways you can do this. Okay. But let me say one thing that you need to do when innovating. You need to put yourself in this frame of mind. People who innovate tend to be naturally curious people. They want to know more. And because they're curious and they want to know more, it doesn't mean you have to be curious about everything in the world. You don't have to be curious about, why ants are so strong for their size or, the solar system. But you need to at least be curious about what you're focused on innovating on. And that means exploring all the different possibilities. Because the ones who break through, the ones who actually come up with the radical innovation and leapfrog their competitors, what they've done is they haven't stopped where everybody else has stopped. So pretty much most people think about what they're doing. No, people aren't dumb in the industry. They all think, but they don't go that extra step where they really push beyond where everybody's doing and start to play with ideas and information and gather and connect different things together and say, wow, there's this new technology out there called virtual reality, or there's, big data. And how would we apply this to this problem that we have in our business? How would that change things if we did that? And they start to go deep and really play like hackers. They start to play around with it, try all these different possibilities. And they're curious, and it's fun for them to do that. And as they go through that process, all of a sudden they get some insights. that they wouldn't have had otherwise and that other people haven't had yet. And that kind of opens the door for them to see a path towards innovating.
So you have to embrace dialogue, right? You have to create these opportunities to talk about this.
Yes. So one way to do it, there's innovators, I like the hands-on hacking where you can do that solo or you can do it as a team. But the other part is another form of innovation, which you're alluding to right now, is when you get together with other really smart people, a lot of times who come from different backgrounds, different disciplines, have a different life experience than you, and will look at the same problems in totally different ways. And you start a dialogue with them. You go back and forth, because I'll tell you, my best ideas come up not when I'm sitting there talking to myself, but a lot of times when I'm talking to somebody else who's really smart and can challenge me and say, no, have you thought of this? Or have you done it that way? Or maybe what if we took it this way? And back and forth out of that dialogue, that Socratic dialogue, questioning each other in a positive way, constructive way, ideas can actually unfold that you wouldn't have had sitting alone by yourself at your computer, Googling it or doing whatever, hacking away. And this is really important. And I would say that this is one of the greatest strengths of Silicon Valley. The greatest strength we have is our diversity, because Silicon Valley has attracted people from all over the globe. We have people from Europe, from the Middle East, Africa, South America, Asia, everywhere converging on this small geographic region with their different experiences, different backgrounds, different ideas, and they are working together to start these new companies. And I think the more diversity you get in your team, the better. Because, as long as you can all collaborate together, as long as you can communicate and speak the same language, then it's a really good thing for setting up kind of an innovation environment.
Yeah. So creating opportunities to brainstorm and that whole idea of diversity, talking and collaborating with diverse people from different walks, different perspectives, is part of getting to that radical change or that radical innovation.
Yeah, because think about it, we all live in our own little bubbles. We meet the same people all the time. We do the same routines. We read the same, we all gravitate towards reading the same blogs, listening to the same podcasts. Other people, especially from different backgrounds, are totally outside that, and they're getting different sources of information. They're accessing different trends, and they're seeing different things. So when you put yourself together with them, each of you can actually help the other go on a path that neither of you would have gone by yourself.
Well, thanks for sharing parts of this whole innovation story with us today, Steve.
My pleasure.
We've come to the end, unfortunately, but before you go, can you please tell our listeners how they can follow you and purchase your new book?
Sure. So you can reach me if you go to founderspace.com. So I am the captain and CEO of Founderspace. You can go there. You can contact me. You can also get my book at makeelephantsfly.com or Amazon or Barnes & Noble. It's everywhere.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve. And hopefully you can come back again for another episode and talk about innovation a little bit more.
I would love that. It's been great. Thank you.